I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Hey Patriot Warrior fam, I'm Face, and these are the histories that America forgot. According to Wikipedia, quote, the Pueblo Revolt of 1680, also known as Pope's Rebellion, was an uprising of most of the indigenous Pueblo people against the Spanish colonizers in the province of Santa Fe de Nuevo Mexico, larger than present-day New Mexico. The Pueblo Revolt killed 400 Spaniards and drove the remaining 2,000 settlers out of the province. The Spaniards reconquered New Mexico 12 years later. For more than 100 years, beginning in 1540, the Pueblo people of present-day New Mexico were subjected to successive waves of soldiers, missionaries, and settlers. These encounters, referred to as entradas, or incursions, were characterized by violent confrontations between Spanish colonists and Pueblo peoples. The Tijuex War, fought in the winter of 1540-41 by the expedition of Francisco Vázquez de Coronado against the 12 or 13 pueblos of Tiwa Native Americans, was particularly destructive to Pueblo and Spanish relations. In 1598, Juan de Oñate led 129 soldiers and 10 Franciscan priests, plus a large number of women, children, servants, slaves, and livestock, into the Rio Grande Valley of New Mexico. There were at the time approximately 40,000 Pueblo Native Americans inhabiting the region. Oñate put down a revolt at Acoma Pueblo by killing and enslaving hundreds of the Native Americans and sentencing all men 25 or older to have a foot cut off. The Acoma massacre would instill fear of and anger at the Spanish in the region for years to come. Franciscan missionaries were assigned to several of the Pueblo towns to Christianize the natives. Spanish colonial policies in the 1500s regarding the humane treatment of Native Americans were often ignored on the northern frontier. With the establishment of the first permanent colonial settlement in 1598, the Pueblos were forced to provide tribute to the colonists in forms of labor, ground corn, and textiles. Encomiendas were soon established by colonists along the Rio Grande, restricting Pueblo access to fertile farmland and water supplies and placing a heavy burden upon Pueblo labor. Especially egregious to the Pueblo was the assault on their traditional religion. Franciscan priests established theocracies in many of the Pueblo villages. In 1608, when it looked as though Spain might abandon the province, the Franciscans baptized 7,000 Pueblos to try to convince the crown otherwise. Although the Franciscans tolerated manifestations of the old religion as long as the Puebloans attended Mass and maintained a public veneer of Catholicism. Fray Alonso de Posada in New Mexico outlawed cachina dances by the Pueblo people and ordered the missionaries to seize and burn their masks, prayer sticks, and effigies. The Franciscan missionaries also forbade the use of entheogenic substances in the traditional religious ceremonies of the Pueblo. Some Spanish officials, such as Nicolás de Aguilar, who attempted to curb the power of the Franciscans, were charged with heresy and tried before the Inquisition. The Pueblos by and large resented the missionaries, with the Hopis in particular referring to Spanish priests as tuta achi, quote, dictator and demanding person, end quote. In the 1670s, drought swept through the region, causing a famine among the Pueblo, and increased raids by the Apache, which Spanish and Pueblo soldiers were unable to prevent. Fray Alonso Benavides wrote multiple letters to the king, describing the conditions, noting, quote, the Spanish inhabitants and Indians alike eat hides and straps of carts, end quote. The unrest among the Pueblos came to a head in 1675. Governor Juan Francisco Trevino ordered the arrest of 47 Pueblo medicine men and accused them of practicing, quote, sorcery. 4 medicine men were sentenced to death by hanging. 3 of those sentences were carried out, while the 4th prisoner committed suicide. The remaining men were publicly whipped and sentenced to prison. When this news reached the Pueblo leaders, they moved in force to Santa Fe, where the prisoners were held. Because a large number of Spanish soldiers were away fighting the Apache, Governor Trevino was forced to accede to the Pueblo demand for the release of the prisoners. Among those released was a San Juan Okeawinge in the Tiwa language, native named Pope. Following his release, Pope, along with a number of other Pueblo leaders, planned and orchestrated the Pueblo revolt. Pope took up residence in Taos Pueblo, about 70 miles north of the capital of Santa Fe, and spent the next 5 years seeking support for a revolt among the 46 Pueblo towns. He gained the support of the northern Tiwa, Tewa, Towa, Cano, and Keres-speaking Pueblos of the Rio Grande Valley. The Pecos Pueblo, 50 miles east of the Rio Grande, pledged its participation in the revolt, as did the Sunni and Hopi, 120 and 200 miles respectively west of the Rio Grande. The Pueblos not joining the revolt were the 4 southern Tehuex towns near Santa Fe, and the Piro Pueblos, south of the principal Pueblo population centers near the present-day city of Socorro. The southern Tiwa and the Piro were more thoroughly integrated into Spanish culture than the other groups. The Spanish population of about 2,400, including mixed-blood mestizos and native servants and retainers, was scattered thinly throughout the region. Santa Fe was the only place that approximated being a town. The Spanish could only muster 170 men with arms. The Pueblos joining the revolt probably had 2,000 or more adult men capable of using native weapons, such as the bow and arrow. It is possible that some Apache and Navajo participated in the revolt. The Pueblo revolt was typical of the millenarian movements in colonial societies. Pope promised that once the Spanish were killed and expelled, the ancient Pueblo gods would reward them with health and prosperity. Pope's plan was that the inhabitants of each pueblo would rise up and kill the Spanish in their area, and then all would advance on Santa Fe to kill or expel all the remaining Spanish. The date set for the uprising was August 11, 1680. Pope dispatched runners to all the pueblos carrying knotted cords. Each morning the Pueblo leadership was to untie one knot from the cord, and when the last knot was untied, that would be the signal for them to rise against the Spaniards in unison. On August 9th, however, the Spaniards were warned of the impending revolt by southern Tiwa leaders, and they captured 2 Tesuque Pueblo youths, entrusted with carrying the message to the Pueblos. They were tortured to make them reveal the significance of the knotted cord. Pope then ordered the revolt to begin a day early. The Hopi Pueblos, located on the remote Hopi Mesas of Arizona, did not receive the advance notice for the beginning of the revolt, and followed the schedule for the revolt. On August 10th, the Puebloans rose up, stole the Spaniards' horses to prevent them from fleeing, sealed off roads leading to Santa Fe, and pillaged Spanish settlements. A total of 400 people were killed, including men, women, children, and 21 of the 33 Franciscan missionaries in New Mexico. In the rebellion at Tusayan, Hopi churches at Awatovi, Shungopavi, and Oraibi were destroyed, and the attending priests were killed. Survivors fled to Santa Fe and Isleta Pueblo, 10 miles south of Albuquerque, and one of the pueblos that did not participate in the rebellion. By August 13th, all the Spanish settlements in New Mexico had been destroyed, and Santa Fe was besieged. The Puebloans surrounded the city and cut off its water supply. In desperation, on August 21st, the New Mexico governor, Antonio de Otormin, barricaded in the palace of the governors, sallied outside the palace with all of his available men, and forced the Puebloans to retreat with heavy losses. He then led the Spaniards out of the city and retreated southward along the Rio Grande, headed for El Paso del Norte. The Puebloans shadowed the Spaniards but did not attack. The Spaniards who had taken refuge in Isleta had also retreated southward on August 15th, and on September 6th the two groups of survivors, numbering 1,946, met at Socorro. About 500 of the survivors were Native American slaves. They were escorted to El Paso by a Spanish supply train. The Puebloans did not block their passage out of New Mexico. The retreat of the Spaniards left New Mexico in the power of the Puebloans. Pope was a mysterious figure in the history of the Southwest, as there are many tales among the Puebloans of what happened to him after the revolt. Later testimony to the Spanish by the Pueblo people was probably colored by anti-Pope sentiments and a desire to tell the Spanish what they wanted to hear. Apparently Pope and his two lieutenants, Alonso Catiti from Santo Domingo and Luis Tupatu from Picuris, traveled from town to town ordering a return, quote, to the state of their antiquity, end quote. All crosses, churches, and Christian images were to be destroyed. The people were ordered to cleanse themselves in ritual baths, to use their Puebloan names, and to destroy all vestiges of the Roman Catholic religion and Spanish culture, including Spanish livestock and fruit trees. Pope, it was said, forbade the planting of wheat and barley and commanded those natives who had been married according to the rites of the Catholic Church to dismiss their wives and to take others after the old native tradition. The Puebloans had no tradition of political unity. Pope was a man of trust and strict policy. Therefore, each pueblo was self-governing, and some, or all, apparently resisted Pope's demands for a return to a pre-Spanish existence. The paradise Pope had promised when the Spanish were expelled did not materialize. A drought continued, destroying Puebloan crops, and the raids by the Apache and Navajo increased. Initially, however, the Puebloans were united in their objective, preventing a return of the Spanish. Pope was deposed as the leader of the Puebloans about a year after the revolt and disappears from history. He is believed to have died shortly before the Spanish reconquest in 1692. In November 1681, Antonio de Otormin attempted to return to New Mexico. He assembled a force of 146 Spanish and an equal number of native soldiers in Paso del Norte, now known as Ciudad Juarez, and marched north along the Rio Grande. He first encountered the Pirro pueblos, which had been abandoned and their churches destroyed. At Isleta Pueblo, he fought a brief battle with the inhabitants and then accepted their surrender. Staying in Isleta, he dispatched a company of soldiers and natives to establish Spanish authority. The Puebloans feigned surrender while gathering a large force to oppose Otormin. With the threat of a Puebloan attack growing, on January 1, 1682, Otormin decided to return to Paso del Norte, burning pueblos and taking the people of Isleta with him. The next Spanish attempt to regain control of New Mexico had failed. Some of the Isleta later returned to New Mexico, but others remained in Paso del Norte, living in the Isleta del Sur pueblo. The Pirro also moved to Paso del Norte to live among the Spaniards, eventually forming part of Piro, Manso, and Tiwa tribe. The Spanish were never able to reconvince some Puebloans to join Santa Fe de Nuevo Mexico, and the Spanish often returned seeking peace instead of reconquest. For example, the Hopi remained free of any Spanish attempt at reconquest, though they did, at several nonviolent attempts, try for unsuccessful peace treaties and unsuccessful trade agreements. For some Puebloans, the revolt was a success in its objective to drive away Spanish influence. The Spanish return to New Mexico was prompted by the fears of French advances into the Mississippi Valley and their desire to create a defensive frontier against the increasingly aggressive nomadic tribes on their northern borders. In August 1692, Diego de Vargas marched to Santa Fe unopposed along with a converted Sia war captain, Bartolomé de Ojeda. De Vargas, with only 60 soldiers, 100 Indian auxiliaries or native soldiers, 7 cannons which he used as leverage against the pueblo inside Santa Fe, and 1 Franciscan priest arrived at Santa Fe on September 13th. He promised the 1,000 pueblo people assembled their clemency and protection if they would swear allegiance to the King of Spain and return to the Christian faith. After a while, the pueblo rejected the Spaniards. After much persuading, the Spanish finally made the pueblo agree to peace. On September 14, 1692, de Vargas proclaimed a formal act of repossession. It was the 13th town he had reconquered for God and King in this manner. He wrote jubilantly to the Conde de Jalve, Viceroy of New Spain. During the next month, de Vargas visited other pueblos and accepted their acquiescence to Spanish rule. Though the 1692 agreement to peace was bloodless, in the years that followed, de Vargas maintained increasingly severe control over the increasingly defiant pueblo. De Vargas returned to Mexico and gathered together about 800 people, including 100 soldiers, and returned to Santa Fe on December 16, 1693. This time, however, 70 pueblo warriors and 400 family members within the town opposed his entry. De Vargas and his forces staged a quick and bloody recapture that concluded with the surrender and execution of the 70 Pueblo warriors on December 30th, and their surviving families, about 400 women and children, were sentenced to 10 years' servitude and distributed to the Spanish colonists as slaves. In 1696, the residents of 14 pueblos attempted a second organized revolt, launched with the murders of 5 missionaries and 34 settlers, and using weapons the Spanish themselves had traded to the natives over the years. De Vargas's retribution was unmerciful, thorough, and prolonged. By the end of the century, the last resisting pueblo town had surrendered, and the Spanish reconquest was essentially complete. Many of the pueblos, however, fled New Mexico to join the Apache or Navajo, or to attempt to resettle on the Great Plains. One of their settlements has been found in Kansas, at El Cuartelejo. While the independence of many pueblos from the Spaniards was short-lived, the Pueblo Revolt gained the Pueblo people a measure of freedom from future Spanish efforts to eradicate their culture and religion following the Reconquest. Moreover, the Spanish issued substantial land grants to each pueblo and appointed a public defender to protect the rights of the Native Americans and argue their legal cases in the Spanish courts. The Franciscan priests returned to New Mexico did not again attempt to impose a theocracy on the pueblo, who continued to practice their traditional religion. The revolt may have increased the spread of horses into the Great Plains when the pueblos seized the livestock abandoned by the fleeing Spaniards, but genetic and archaeological studies indicate that a native horse culture was already widely established by the first half of the 17th century.
You're never gonna make it, you're not good enough. There's a million other people with the same stuff. You really think you're different? Man, you must be kidding. Think you're gonna hit it, but you just don't get it. It's impossible, it's not probable, you're irresponsible. Too many obstacles, you gotta stop it, yo. You gotta take it slow, you can't be a pro. Don't waste your time no more. Who the fuck are you to tell me what to do? I don't give a damn if you say you disapprove. I'm gonna make my move, I'm gonna make it soon. And I'll do it cause it's what I wanna fucking do. Cause all these opinions and all these positions, they come in millions, they blocking your vision. But no, you can't listen, that shit is all fiction. Cause you hold the power as long as you're dreaming. There's no way that you make it, and maybe you could fake it, but you're never gonna make it. Are you just gonna take that? Make them take it all back. Don't tell me you believe that. Are you just gonna take that? Or will you fucking fight back? Or will you fucking fight back? You ain't never ever gonna break it. You can never beat them and they're better than you face it. Thinking that they give a damn, you're not thinking straight, kid. No, they don't give a damn, you got what I'm saying? I'm not fucking playing, I'll give it to you straight, man. There's too many others and you're not that great, man. Stop what you're saying, stop what you're making. Everybody here knows that you just faking. Nah, I don't wanna hear it anymore, I don't wanna hear it anymore. All these fucking thoughts, they are not what I need anymore. I'm about to shut the motherfucking door on all you poor ass haters with your heads in the clouds, talking out loud so proud. You better shut your goddamn mouth before I do more speak out. It's about to head south. Never gonna make it. There's no way that you make it, and maybe you could fake it, but you're never gonna make it. Are you just gonna take that? Make them take it all back. Don't tell me you believe that. Are you just gonna take that? Or will you fucking fight back? Fight back.